I am proud to be an Israeli, and I am proud to be Jewish.
There is a place in the Middle East that people call a holy land, yet others whisper about it as the party capital and the most sinful corner of the entire region, a place where you can pray at the Western Wall in the morning, join a pride parade in the afternoon, and end your night in a bar that refuses to sleep, all within the same square mile. This tiny country sits at a rare crossroads of Asia, Europe, and Africa, a geographic intersection that feels more like the world folded itself into one compact frame. Its land area is only about 22,000 square kilometers, smaller than the state of New Jersey, and its population rests around 9.8 million people, roughly the size of a major European city. Compared with nations like France or Germany or Japan, this place is much smaller in size, yet its income per capita quietly surpasses some of them. More than 90% of its citizens live in urban areas, giving it one of the highest urbanization rates in the Middle East, and adding to the contrast between ancient traditions and a fast-moving modern life. What makes this country truly fascinating is the collision of worlds within its borders. It is the spiritual heart of three major religions, the engine of a dense startup ecosystem, a lightning rod for debates about nightlife and LGBTQ rights, and a land filled with mysteries that archaeologists are still trying to understand. So the real question is simple. How can a country this small, with almost no natural resources, be so wealthy, so rebellious, and so sacred that the world cannot stop arguing about it? Let's begin the journey and find out. A small country with a full range of landscapes and a revived language. Look at it on a map and it seems tiny. But give yourself a car and a few hours on the road, and you can drive through three completely different worlds without ever crossing a border. One moment you are on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. The next, you are rolling across the Negev desert, then climbing into high plateaus and green valleys, and eventually reaching the Dead Sea, the lowest point on Earth. For a place this compact, its biodiversity is surprisingly rich, with more than 2,600 plant species and over 500 bird species, a level of variety that rivals countries many times its size. It feels like someone squeezed an entire atlas into a piece of land smaller than a modest Vietnamese province. A place where you can start your morning at the beach, spend your afternoon in the desert, and end your evening in the mountains. The emotional heartbeat of this landscape lies in the people who live in it. Israelis have such a deep love for nature that the country entered the 21st century with more trees than the day it was founded, a rare achievement in a region known for harsh climates. And alongside this love for the land is the remarkable revival of Hebrew, a language that once lived only in scripture, brought back to life, and spoken daily in streets, schools, cafes, and homes. If you had just one day here, would you choose to drive into the desert, climb into the mountains, or float on the Dead Sea first? A long history and a map that never stops changing. There are very few places on Earth where simply opening a different map can make the borders shift right in front of your eyes. Yet here, that is exactly what happens. This land has been home to the Jewish people since the ancient kingdoms of Israel and Judah, a time so far back that most of its stories feel like they belong to another world entirely. Through the rise and fall of empires, the Jewish population was scattered across continents, but somehow, their religious identity and cultural memory stayed intact. That deep sense of belonging built a longing that lasted for centuries, a dream of returning to a place they could finally call home. In 1948, that dream became reality when the modern state of Israel was declared. And from that moment onward, the region has seen ongoing disputes, shifting control, and borders that seem to evolve with every chapter of history. Trying to understand these borders is a bit like opening a Photoshop file, where every political power has added a new layer, adjusted an old one, or blurred the edges just enough to change the picture. Different maps around the world often label the same areas in different ways, not because one is right and another is wrong, but because they reflect long and complicated histories that no single map can fully explain. It raises a simple but important question. Do you think looking at one map is ever enough to understand the story of a place like this? A desert nation with no oil, yet richer than Japan and France. In the Middle East, wealth is almost always associated with oil, but Israel turns that idea upside down. This is a country with no major oil reserves, and with nearly 60% of its land covered in desert, yet its income per capita climbs higher than that of Japan and France. The secret is not buried underground, it is in the people themselves. With roughly 6,000 startups among about 9.8 million residents, the country averages one startup for every 1,400 people, a ratio that feels almost unreal. Israel pours more than 5% of its entire GDP into research and development, placing it among the top nations in the world for innovation. In many ways, it truly is a country powered by brainpower rather than crude oil. Venture capital investment per person is several times higher than in much of Europe, drawing global tech giants and entrepreneurs who see this land as a fertile ground for ideas. But behind the glowing statistics is a reality that is less often talked about. Economic inequality runs deep, and while the tech sector thrives, whole communities struggle to keep up. Ultra-Orthodox Jewish families and Arab-Israeli communities experience poverty rates above 45 to 50%, revealing a gap between the nation's shining success stories and the everyday lives of many citizens. So it leaves us with a meaningful question. Should a nation be considered successful because of how many startups it produces, or because everyone within it has the chance to live comfortably? Tel Aviv, the city of party, pride, dogs, and scooters. If Jerusalem is the city of God, then Tel Aviv is, in the eyes of many, the city of parties and temptation. This coastal metropolis is one of the most LGBTQ-friendly cities in the world, drawing more than 250,000 people to its Pride Parade each year. LGBTQ citizens serve openly in the military, and same-sex marriages performed abroad are legally recognized at home, creating an atmosphere of freedom that is rare in the region. Tel Aviv also has a personality that feels almost playful. With around 30,000 dogs for just about 400,000 residents, the city has more dogs per capita than many cities in Europe or America. Dog parks, pet-friendly beaches, and even dog-centered festivals are woven into everyday life. Move through the streets and you will notice something else. More than 20% of urban trips are made on scooters or electric bikes, gliding along hundreds of kilometers of dedicated lanes that give the city its signature fast-moving rhythm. The vibe here is unlike anywhere else in the Middle East. Tel Aviv feels like a pocket-sized mix of Berlin and Amsterdam and San Francisco, a place where the sky has not fully brightened before the nightlife fades. Bars, clubs, and beach parties pulse almost every day of the week, especially from Thursday night through Sunday morning. Tech entrepreneurs, artists, backpackers, and the LGBTQ community blend together, turning the city into a constant crossroads of energy and creativity. So if you landed in Israel today, where would you choose to spend your first night in Tel Aviv? On the beach, in a bar, or in a sea of rainbow flags at the Pride Parade? Jerusalem, where three faiths share one city. There are few places in the world where Jews, Muslims, and Christians can all point to the same piece of land and say, "This is sacred to us." Jerusalem is that rare city. For Jews, it was once the home of the Holy Temple. For Muslims, it is the place where the Prophet Muhammad is believed to have ascended to heaven. For Christians, it is where Jesus was crucified, a cornerstone of their faith. Walk through the old city and you feel history under your feet. The ancient walls and narrow stone streets are recognized by UNESCO, yet just beyond them, you see modern light rail trains gliding past European-style neighborhoods, a contrast so sharp it almost feels unreal. Jerusalem is like a timeline where the past and present are layered on top of each other, refusing to separate. The city is divided into rhythms rather than borders. In the Jewish quarter, everything slows to a near stop during Shabbat. In the Muslim quarter, Friday brings waves of worshippers filling the streets as they head to prayer. And on Sunday, the Christian quarter becomes crowded with families and pilgrims making their way to church. Turn a single corner, and you can move from quiet reverence to lively celebration, from one sacred heartbeat to another. So if you were standing in a place that billions of people consider holy, what do you think you would feel in that moment? The culture shock of Shabbat, kosher rules, and straightforward conversations. If you arrive on the wrong day in Israel, you might think you have wandered into a deserted city. When Shabbat begins on Friday evening and lasts until Saturday evening, buses and trains stop running. Many shops close their doors, and whole neighborhoods fall into a quiet stillness that catches many travelers off guard. Even elevators switch into Shabbat mode, stopping automatically on every floor so no one has to press a button, since that simple action is considered a form of labor. Food rules bring another surprise. Kosher laws shape everyday meals in ways visitors often do not expect. Meat and dairy cannot be mixed. Pork is off the table. Seafood without scales, like shrimp or crab, is not allowed. Many households keep 2 full sets of pots, pans, plates, and utensils, one for meat and one for dairy. A system that can feel almost like running 2 miniature kitchens under one roof. For many newcomers, Shabbat feels like a social operating system update, where everything switches into rest mode at the same time, and the conversation style adds another layer of cultural adjustment. Israelis tend to speak directly, asking about your age, your salary, or your relationship status with the same ease others might ask about the weather. To them, this is honesty and interest, but to travelers it can be a small cultural jolt. So which style do you prefer? A world of soft, indirect politeness, or a society where people simply ask what they want to know? Israeli women, confident, strong, and unafraid to take the first step. In many places, women wait for men to make the first move. In Israel, plenty of women are completely comfortable being the ones who propose first. Their beauty is a striking blend of the Middle East and the Mediterranean, with sun-kissed skin, deep dark eyes, and thick black hair that give them a naturally bold presence. Their style shifts with the city. In Tel Aviv, they stroll the beaches in bikinis with total confidence, yet only an hour away in Jerusalem, they choose more modest clothing out of respect for religious tradition. Culturally, they tend to marry later, especially in big cities, where independence and personal goals often come before settling down. If in many countries the ideal woman is expected to be gentle and soft-spoken, the ideal in Israel often means knowing what you want and saying it clearly. Women here are direct, proactive, and unafraid to take the lead. They might be the ones to start a conversation, suggest a date, or even propose marriage. They value honesty and equality, and they have little patience for grand romantic gestures that feel staged rather than sincere. It is not surprising that many Israeli women form relationships with partners from Europe or the United States, as their confidence and clarity make a strong impression on people from abroad. So here is the question. Would you be comfortable dating in a place where the woman might be the one to step forward first? A year of fire, tents, candles, and costumes. If you think Judaism is only about strict rules, you probably have never lived through a festival season in Israel. This is a country where celebrations unfold one after another, each with its own colors, flavors, and stories. Purim turns the streets into a playful carnival with costumes, parades, and the tradition of giving pastries to those in need. Sukkot transforms backyards and balconies with temporary huts made from branches, where families gather to eat, talk, and sometimes even sleep under the fragile roofs that honor their ancestors' journey through the desert. Then comes Hanukkah, 8 nights of candlelight glowing from windows across the country. Families eat jelly-filled donuts and children spin dreidels, while markets and town squares shine with warm winter lights. And later in the year arrives Lag B'Omer, when thousands of bonfires blaze across the hills. People grill food, sing songs, and tell stories late into the night, turning the whole landscape into something that feels both ancient and festive. A year in Israel feels like a chain of mini-festivals, each chapter carrying a piece of the nation's history, each celebration blending spirituality with a street party atmosphere that would not feel out of place in Europe. Adults and children alike help keep these traditions alive, making the energy of each festival something you can feel just by walking through the city. So which one would you want to experience first? The colorful costumes of Purim, the family tents of Sukkot, or the fire-lit night of Lag B'Omer? The flavors of Israel, from hummus to shakshuka. If you think Israeli cuisine is just falafel and shawarma, then you have only tasted the opening chapter of the story. Food here is a reflection of centuries of migration, tradition, and Mediterranean influence, and every dish feels like a small window into a much bigger world. Take hummus, for example, a silky blend of chickpeas, olive oil, garlic, and lemon, served with warm pita that soaks up every bit of its creamy richness. Falafel offers something entirely different. Crispy fried balls of ground chickpeas tucked into pita with fresh vegetables and tahini sauce. Shawarma brings the aroma of slow-roasted meat, sliced thin, crunchy on the outside and tender inside. often wrapped in bread and dripping with flavor. And then there is shakshuka, eggs gently poached in a bubbling tomato and pepper sauce, best enjoyed hot with bread to scoop up every last bite. Israeli food feels like a full Mediterranean Middle Eastern journey laid out on a single table. Many dishes are comfort food for locals, simple enough to be eaten daily yet meaningful enough to be passed down through generations. You can find hummus in upscale restaurants, but you can also stumble upon one of the best bowls of your life in a tiny stall hidden inside a noisy market. So if you had to choose, what would you try first? The creamy hummus, the sizzling hot shakshuka, or the irresistible aroma of shawarma on a Tel Aviv night? What Israel offers travelers, from the Dead Sea to Acre, Galilee, and Eilat. Many people imagine Israel as a land of conflict and religion, but in reality, it is one of the few places where you can float effortlessly on salty water and dive over coral reefs in the very same trip. The country's landscapes are compact, yet astonishingly diverse, giving travelers a little bit of everything without ever needing to go far. Acre, also known as Akko, sits on the Mediterranean coast with a history that feels carved into every stone. Its old city is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, filled with Crusader-era tunnels, ancient fortresses, and winding markets scented with Middle Eastern spices. Galilee offers a different kind of magic, a peaceful freshwater lake tied to countless biblical stories and surrounded by quiet hills that make it perfect for reflection or exploration. Head south, and the scenery changes again. Eilat, on the Red Sea, is all about color and energy. From coral reefs teeming with life to snorkeling, kayaking, and glass-bottom boat tours that make the underwater world easy to admire. And then there is the Dead Sea, the lowest point on Earth, where the water is nearly 9 times saltier than the ocean. The moment you lean back and float, maybe even holding a newspaper above your head, you understand why travelers describe the experience as surreal. The mineral-rich mud here has become famous for its skincare benefits, adding a relaxing ritual to the visit. A trip around Israel feels like taking 3 vacations at once: a spiritual journey, a walk through history, and a beach holiday all wrapped into a single plane ticket. So if you could choose only one place to check in, would it be the Dead Sea, the ancient streets of Acre, the calm waters of Galilee, or the vibrant coast of Eilat? The unsolved mysteries of Israel, from a massive stone structure to the Gate of Hell. Behind all the stories of startups and nightlife, Israel hides places that locals casually refer to as the Gate of Hell. These mysteries sit quietly in the landscape, older than recorded history, and no one can fully explain them. Beneath the waters of the Sea of Galilee lies a massive stone structure, about 70 meters wide and 10 meters tall, made from enormous basalt rocks weighing tens of thousands of tons. It is estimated to be more than 4,000 years old, yet no one knows who built it or why, a question that continues to challenge archaeologists. Further north on Mount Hermon are caves wrapped in legends of fallen angels, places where ancient stories say dark spirits were once imprisoned. The mountain is better known today for skiing, but these shadowed openings carved into the rock add an eerie contrast to the bright snow above. And then there is Tel Aviv, home to an ancient stone gate over 3,800 years old. Many locals call it the Gate of Hell, a site they might visit during the day but would never dare approach at night. Israel is not just a startup nation. It is like a real-life version of an open-world game map, where every corner seems to hide a mysterious quest. One moment you are in a cutting-edge tech hub, and the next, you are hearing tales of angels, curses, and gateways to other realms. The contrast is unforgettable. So, if you had the chance, would you explore these places in broad daylight, or would you prefer to admire them safely through a screen? The real cost of living in Israel, is it as expensive as people say? Wealth, modern living, and a booming startup scene all come with a truth many visitors only discover later. Living in Israel is far from cheap. Renting a one-bedroom apartment in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem can range from about $1,200 to $2,000 a month, while smaller cities usually sit between $700 and $1,100. Groceries often cost around $350 to $450 a month, and even the simplest street food, like falafel or shawarma, can set you back $10 to $20 per serving. Sit down at a mid-range restaurant and you are likely looking at $25 to $40 per person. Even a basic gym membership usually costs between $40 and $80 a month. This is not the kind of place where you can rely on a casual remote income and expect to live comfortably without planning. The financial landscape can feel split in two. For many young people, the rise of tech and startups offers opportunity and upward mobility. But for other communities, the high cost of daily life creates real pressure. One side of the city glows with glass office towers and successful companies, while just a few streets away, families struggle to keep up with rent and groceries. It creates a vivid contrast, a country that feels both prosperous and challenging at the same time. So here is the question. With your current income, would you be willing to move to Israel for a year just to experience life here firsthand? Traveling in Israel, safety, religion, and the things you should avoid. Many people say that traveling in Israel is not dangerous, as long as you know one rule: do not joke around with security or politics. The moment you land, you will notice that airport security is some of the strictest in the world. Officers ask detailed questions and inspect luggage carefully. So the best thing you can do is answer clearly, stay calm, and avoid any kind of humor that could be misunderstood. When visiting religious sites like Jerusalem's Old City, the Western Wall, or the Al-Aqsa compound, dressing modestly is essential. Women should bring a scarf, and everyone should avoid taking photos of people who are praying or performing rituals. Conversations can also be a sensitive area. It is wise not to bring up politics, conflicts, Gaza, or Palestine with strangers, as these topics can create tension very quickly. If you want to explore the West Bank, going with a guided tour is the safest and most informative option. Inside the major cities, you can rely on buses, light rail, and taxi apps. But if you choose to drive, pay close attention to areas near borders or checkpoints, as some roads can lead into restricted zones. Traveling in Israel can feel like stepping into a place with extremely strong Wi-Fi for history and religion. You connect instantly, but if you press the wrong button, things can get complicated. Still, once you get past the initial tension at the airport, many travelers are surprised by how warm and welcoming local people can be. Respect the culture, follow the rules, and your trip will likely be safe, memorable, and full of meaningful experiences. So after hearing these tips, does Israel feel more intimidating to you, or suddenly a bit more approachable than before? Israel is a place where you can stand on ground sacred to three major religions, walk past bars and rainbow flags in the same afternoon, and witness a nation with no oil grow wealthier than half of Europe, while ancient legends about gates to the underworld and fallen angels still echo across its hills. It is a land of contradictions, and that is exactly what makes it unforgettable. This country is both a holy destination and a global hotspot for debate. It is a startup nation filled with innovation, yet home to communities that still struggle to make ends meet. It can feel like a hard place to fully understand, but for anyone who wants to grasp the complexity of the modern Middle East, it is a destination you cannot overlook. So here is the question for you. Out of everything you have just heard, which detail surprised you the most or completely changed the way you see Israel? Comment the number of the section or the topic you want us to explore even deeper in the next video. And speaking of the next video, if you are curious, we can dive into life in Palestine, explore Lebanon, or zoom in on Tel Aviv's nightlife to see what really happens after dark. If this video helped you see Israel from a new perspective, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And now, go ahead and leave your comment, because I read every single one to decide where we travel next.